Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dimensions of reliability and validity, and no test can be utilized without having norms. So, norms is nothing. When you talk about norms, this is nothing but a standard score. A standard test score by the help of which we compare individual scores or people's score on a particular intelligence scale test. So, it is otherwise also known as a standard. So, just like you when you purchase anything, any raw materials from a grocery shop, 1 kilo, 2 kilo. So, one side the material, the other side is the standard weight. So, that compares the weight itself. So, similarly, a standard score, a norms compares different people's individual test scores. So, these norms can be of various types: age related, grade related, and then standard score norms like Z scores, T scores are calculated for comparison of individual scores, or some people say cut-off scores. So, cut-off scores are here age wise cut-off scores, grade wise cut-off scores. When we prepare intelligence test for different samples on the basis of different age groups. So, that is why we say a cut-off scores meant for children cannot be applicable for cut-off score meant for adults. So, accordingly we decide. As far as IQ test is concerned, here also the norm is equally applicable. It is an average score on a particular test made by a specified population at a time. They are not permanent and need to be revised from time to time. But now the question is, how far we can go ahead with making use of this IQ score? To what age group this IQ score is relevant? So, this is a big question, because IQ score usually basically highlights the reasoning capabilities of students. Most of the test items, whether it is a series completion, odd man out, picture completion, etc., etc. But intelligence is much more than this. So, therefore, after going to a certain adult age group, say for example, people on job, a graduate who is joining a particular job in industry or corporate after graduation, I do not see any meaning applying a IQ test to judge their mental ability. Meant for mental ability, meant for a particular job in an organization, right. However, psychologists have recommended adult intelligence scale, adult intelligence scale. Although it gives an impression about measuring the adult intellectual domain or mental ability, but many times we also miss out many important dimensions that covers within the domain of cognition. So, that is why the concept cognition is defined in terms of mental activities, more specifically the process of knowing. So, it involves how we acquire, store, retrieve and use knowledge. If we use cognition every time we acquire a bit of information, place it on a storage, bring it out of storage or use that information in some way, the cognition must include a wide range of mental processes. It includes a wide range of mental processes. So, therefore, probably we will be missing most of the important mental processes while evaluating one's adult intelligence. So, therefore, it is essential to look beyond the traditional intelligence scale to map one's mental ability, or we can reframe and redesign the other areas of cognition to include in the measurement of intelligence. That would be a better approach to study adult intelligence, such as perception, memory, imagery, language, concept formation, problem solving, reasoning and decision making. Just now we discussed about the CAS, where the comprehensive assessment system developed by Das and Naglieri. Although this is a neuropsychological tool, now it has been extended to measure executive functions. Executive functions. So, recently J.P. Das has written a new book on cognitive planning and executive function. Cognitive planning and executive functions. So, this has been very interesting and has a lot of applications in the domain of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial personality, entrepreneurial personality development. It has also applications in executive decision making, executive decision making, problem solving, it may also give an impression of linguistic or language skills, language and skills, related skills, language and related skills. These are likely to develop leadership and team skills, leadership and team skills. So, although it is focusing on the cognitive areas, at the same time the CAS is extending. Not exactly we can concentrate on CAS. CAS is restricted to a particular age level. Executive decision or executive functions or planning function of executives can be measured. Maybe I think Professor Das has developed a tool to measure the executive functions of corporate managers, to how to examine different how these planning functions attention and other successive and simultaneous processing acting on and helping the executives by enhancing their cognitive domains, facilitating their problem solving and reasoning and decision making abilities. Another domain is called also their reasoning capacities. So, these are the major outcomes of different type of intelligence test that has been in use both in schools and corporate sectors. When we talk about in the IQ test, it has also lot of applications in educational situations, educational setting, clinical and counseling settings, clinical and counseling settings. It is useful for personality development, by enhancing one's reasoning and logical ability. On the basis of the test score, the teacher can assess the different level of IQ, IQ superior, IQ average, IQ inferior or poor, you can say. Okay. Say for there are 3 categories of students available in a single class. How the teacher is going to deal with them? If the teacher is going to adopt a high level of teaching methods, it may not be appropriate for the other 2 groups. But if the teacher adopts a low level of teaching method, that may not motivate or create interest in the superior or average students. So, therefore, on the basis of this IQ assessment, this will help the teacher to go for designing special classes for poor students and maintaining average or a high average level classes for other 2 categories. So, that is how it helps in educational settings, teachers and academicians. It also helps policy makers, academic policy makers to design school curriculums. That is very important. What level of curriculum should be appropriate the general populations? In clinical and counseling, if you look into DSM classifications, most of the psychological deficiencies are based on mental deficiencies. The abnormality is categorized. If you look at the classification of IQ scores, it is on the basis of IQ scores, the people's abnormality is classified. Somebody is mentally retarded, somebody is very poor, somebody is just average. So, accordingly they can get counseled by the psychologist, and thereby taking advice they can develop further. So, this is how it is helpful in clinical settings. In general, psychologists can counsel their clients, whether it is students or an adult, in which directions they need to move and what are the gray areas they are deficient. So, this can be highlighted, and this will be useful for vocational counseling. Vocational counseling. A particular student or candidate can be counseled on the basis of his IQ scores in which profession he is going to excel. But this cognitive profiling will be more useful for the higher age groups, maybe graduates and above, so that the better or the broader cognitive profile could be made if they look into the concept formation. Suppose somebody is interested in designing, somebody is developing a software, how he is conceptualizing that framework within his mind, that is called concept formations. How he develops images into ideas, how he develops reasoning to connect his thoughts and ideas, so that they are turned into a viable product. So, that is why it goes on, and how his attention, memory and reasoning abilities are helpful in problem solving and decision making capacities. Overall, all these overall abilities is going to enhance his executive functions as a whole. So, that is the focus of going for a overall mapping of cognitive profile of executives. However, there are some other issues related to intelligence we can see here, like factors that influence intelligence, that are responsible for development of intelligence and also at the same time discourage of intelligence. We can just quickly see few of them. Here are some of the factors, like say the child's influence. Genetic is very important factors in the growth of one's intelligence, where we look the interactions of environment plays a very important role. There are also we have observed and there are scientific evidences, IQ score differs with regard to genders. Like say for example, males have been found to be high on their reasoning abilities than females. So, there are few studies, but it is not always correct, but there are certain abilities there what you say females are better than the males. The immediate environmental influence, say, suppose say for examples like family environment, school environment, peer influence, etc., etc., these are likely to influence the cognitive domain of students. As a whole, society is completely responsible for a student's or a person's intellectual growth, in the sense that we have seen that people brought up in a very impoverished climate where facilities are not there, the children are deprived of basic needs, they are deprived of say for example, school necessities, they are likely to develop a very low level of intellectual profiles. And there are also studies that shows about the race and ethnicity, like in earlier times when the theory of intelligence come up, some psychologists said that whites are higher in their intelligence than blacks, but later on there were many contradictions to those. Later on people also find even many blacks are brighter than the whites. So, this is a very controversial issues that still remain as unresolved or unanswered questions in the field of intelligence. Like when you talk more about gender, boys and girls tend to be equivalent in most aspects of intelligence, but the average IQ scores of boys and girls is virtually similar or identical. The extremes, both low and high ends, are over represented by boys. Girls as group tend to be stronger in verbal fluency, writing, in perceptual speed. Boys as a group tend to be stronger in their visual spatial processing, in science, in mathematical problem solving, etc. When we discuss the influence of schooling, students attending school makes better score on their IQ test. There are studies about what happens during summer break. Children from families of low socioeconomic status have a drop in achievement scores. Children from families of high socioeconomic status have achievement score high and stay constant or rise slightly, because they are able to afford to have a very meaningful and enjoyable summer break than those people are from low socioeconomic status. However, poverty has been seen a big influential factors in the development of children's intelligence, because poor children are not able to afford to their expenses in schooling, buying schooling materials, or going for extra tuitions, etc., etc. Children from lower and working class homes average 10 to 15 points below their middle class age mates on IQ test. In many countries, it is also seen that children from wealthier homes, they score better on IQ test than children from poor homes, because the high class or the high socio-economic status children are likely to enjoy better facilities, availabilities, etc., in comparison to their counterparts in the poor homes. The greater the gap in wealth in a country, the greater the difference in their IQ status or IQ scores. The chronic inadequate diet can also disrupt the brain development. That is also another significant influence as far as the biological factors are concerned in the development of one's intelligence. As you all know that heredity has a big role to influence. So, a person who does not get proper diet is likely to develop deficiencies, mental deficiencies, then reduced to access to health services, poor parenting, insufficient stimulations, and emotional support can impair the intellectual growth. So, this is where the intelligence is moving towards a bit of emotional intelligence, like poor parenting may have a bearing on low level of emotional support. So, this emotional support can be compensated if the parents are also brought up or nurtured to enhance their emotional capacities, where AI has a greater role to play. We will take up those issues later on. However, race and ethnicity has also influence on intelligence. The average IQ score of Latino and American Indian children, they fall somewhere in between those of Euro Americans and African American children. The average IQ score of Asian American children, they tend to be higher than any other group in the US. So, these evidences are implications that there are a little bit difference with regard to race and ethnicity in terms of IQ scores. American Indian children's, the better on the performance part than the verbal part of an IQ score. Then Latino children shows better on the performance on the part than the verbal part of IQ test. Asian American children have better score on performance part than the verbal part of IQ test. Studies also shows that African American children are better on the verbal part than the performance part of the IQ test. If you look at the overall differences, the differences in IQ scores of children from different racial and ethnic groups describes children's performance only in the environments in which children live. So, therefore, culture plays also a very important role in the determination of one's intelligence. Therefore, it would not be fair to apply a culture specific test across different cultural groups or cultural samples. Therefore, it would be advisable to practitioners and applied psychologists, those who use intelligence test, should you go for always culture free test, or what we say culture fair intelligence test, such as Rabin's progressive matrices, standard progressive matrices, Rabin's advanced progressive matrices. So, these are some of the some of the tests, they are culture free. Then what is culture free? A culture fair or culture free test is a test that reduce the cultural burden of the test, that would make minimal use of language and not ask for any specific facts. Say for examples, a test that contain certain questions related to a church and mosque, that may happen or that may hinder the information capability of a students from Hindu community who is not well aware about mosque and church. So, therefore, instead of church related questions, if in that place temple related questions will be created, maybe that will be facilitate a culture specific intellectual profiles. So, therefore, In order to avoid those type of questions, if a test maker can go for a picture based or activity based questions, that would be a better way of measuring one's intelligence. So, these matrices progress from easy to difficult items measures abstract reasoning. Even on culture fair test, Euro-American and African American children still differ on their intelligence scores. One reason is that culture can influence a child's familiarity with the entire test situations. This is in a nutshell about the concept. So far we discussed the different aspects of intelligence, starting the introduction, then meaning and nature, then types and scope, then after understanding the concept, we went to the different approaches and models of intelligence. We discussed about two groups of theories. One is content theories, content versus process. This content theory is otherwise known as the psychometric theories, psychometric or factor theories and process theories. And thereafter we also examine various types of test, where we examine the measurement of intelligence. Okay. Then after measurement, then we examine the possible applications. Of intelligence test score. We also examine why IQ is not enough. Under this framework, why IQ is not enough? Because of its domain of coverage in the test itself, because IQ mostly covers into the reasoning aspects. But when you discuss intelligence in the framework of cognitive ability or cognition, in the domain of cognition, we are missing the higher form of cognitive abilities of a person after a certain period of time in his life. So, therefore, we moved from a paradigm shift in intelligence measurement, in ability measurement, particularly in ability measurement. What is that paradigm shift? From IQ to cognitive profiling. Cognitive profiling. Where in addition to reasoning, we try to examine the relevance of concept formation, image formation, analysis, attention, perception, memory, problem solving, reasoning, decision makings, and we also examine how these cognitive processes are going to be helpful to corporate executives, its application for corporate. its applications for executive functions, right, and we also outlined the applications and shortcomings of IQ score. Hopefully, these discussions will help us in understanding in better way or exploring a new dimensions of human abilities, what we call emotional intelligence, in our next discussions. Thank you very much for your kind patience. I hope after going through this lecture, you will be able to understand and analyze what intelligence is. So, here is a small assignments that you can go for. How do you conceptualize human intelligence? What are the different theories and measurement approaches? How the study of intelligence will be helpful for improving the intellectual ability of a person to succeed in life. Once you answer these questions, maybe probably you will realize the value of this session on intelligence, its meaning, nature and its application. Thank you very much.